Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
Well, hi, Greg.
Hey, Maggie.
Today we have co-host, aka my husband, Greg, with us. And we're going to talk about love and relationships and money. We're going to answer some questions we've gotten from listeners about like how we've met. But I really want to spend a lot of the conversation talking about love and money and their relationship with each other. And, you know, the age-old phrase, love doesn't cost a thing. Doesn't, yet somehow it turns into. And it's fitting because this will air the day before Valentine's Day.
And even though that's the saying, I think many people would actually say love is expensive.
Yeah, I would say true, real love isn't expensive. And that's what I would, challenge people on. But look, I'm not knocking Valentine's Day. Everybody has mixed views on that holiday. I know everyone's got a whole Galentine's Day trend going also. Also not knocking it. I'll take any excuse to hang out with friends. But Valentine's Day is one of many holidays that has kind of become like, quote, a Hallmark holiday. And you know, again, I don't even want to get into my feelings on Valentine's Day specifically because it's not about that. I just have very strong feelings about spending money and not trying to impress people, right? Or not spending money to impress people, I guess is the other way to say that. And so I just think it like sets the wrong tone for sort of the honesty and vulnerability that is so important to make a relationship successful. And I'm not saying you shouldn't spend money on someone you love. I do it all the time. But I am more saying I don't think it should be the crux of a relationship and the foundation of a relationship and necessary. If you don't have the money to spend, don't spend it. You can have an amazing relationship and love story and wedding and everything else and have the best relationship in the world and spend very little on each other. And you can spend tons of money on each other and have like the worst relationship in the world, right? Like there is no equating one to the other necessarily. I just feel very strongly about like intentional and value-based spending, which I know we talk about a lot on here.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've just said. And I think it's important to find someone who shares your values around money. And if you're both big spenders, then you know, maybe that can work. I don't know how it'll work financially, but at least you're aligned on.
Well, hopefully you're also big earners. If you're gonna be big spenders, you just got to be big earners too. So
well said.
Yeah. Okay. Before we get started, or maybe we are started, I'd just like to give a shout out because I have a warm cup of freshly brewed decaf coffee in my hand. It's like 2:00. So, I mean, I drink decaf at 8 a.m., but it is 2:00. So I think many people are drinking decaf by now. This is not about decaf. This is about the warm coffee in my hand that you just made me. And I really try to appreciate the like little things that you do for me, Greg. And I just want to give a shout out that making coffee is one of those things that you do on a day in and day out basis for me. You do it in the morning. Like you have, if you're off somewhere, you leave every time I walk out and I sleep in later than you, or you get the kids ready or whatever it is. I walk out to the kitchen. The Keurig is prepped. It has the right amount of water in it. It has a pod that he makes his own Keurig pods because, you know, we're frugal.
Frugal and environmentally conscious.
Environmental
as
is a huge
yeah.
piece for that, actually. Yeah. The pod's in there. He stuffed it with decaf because I'm the only one that drinks decaf in the morning in this household. And I know it's got my decaf pod. Sometimes there's even a little note on it, but there's just like always a coffee. And then you're always offering like throughout the day, you're always like, can I make you a coffee? Like right before this, he was like, can I make you a coffee for when we record? And I was like, actually, thank you. That would be lovely. But you just do like those to me, that thing you do for me, like on a consistent basis that is just little and thoughtful. A small act means more to me than anything you could ever buy me. I just want to let you know that, Greg.
Well, that is really sweet. And I appreciate you saying that. And that's part of the reason I love you, is because I think you value those small things. And I do as well.
Okay. I'm done gushing on you for a moment, but we'll get back to that. So we frequently get the question from listeners, and I think someone actually requested we do a whole episode on this, so let's consider that this episode, how we met and how our financial story evolved together to us retiring early. So let's hit both of those points. And do you want to start with how we met, Greg?
Yeah. So we met, we were both coming out of longer marriages, 10 years each, which is kind of interesting. Very similar stages of life, and young kids, and trying to figure out this new divorced life. And we met online. I actually had signed up for a now defunct website called chemistry.com.
Owned by Match, which more people have heard of.
Right. I got an email with, here's some people that we think you might be a good match with. Or sorry, it probably actually said that you have good chemistry with, in keeping with their little thing. And you did some personality tests. And so even though they went out of business, I think they, it was a good company based on at least our case. Experience. So got this profile, read it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. There was one little tagline under her screen name or username, and it said "focused but fun." And I think that that describes Maggie pretty well. And I enjoyed her profile. I clicked on it, said I liked her, and within a day or two, got "this person likes you back," and then it said "this person has sent you a message." I was excited to read the message, clicked on it, and realized that I could not read the message because I was not a paid member yet. So I then thought, okay.
I'd just like to take it back. Love does cost something.
Well, exactly.
By the way.
That's where I was gonna.
How much? $19.95. Yeah. What did love cost you, Greg?
It was $19.95. Yeah. Well worth it.
What a deal.
But I mean, there was some part of me that thought, oh, what if I pay for this, check this message, and the message says, "Oops, sorry, didn't mean to like you back. Not exactly interested, but good luck out there."
Yeah, you seem like a nice guy.
Frustrated. I kind of was worried, but that was not the case.
To be clear, you were worried whether it was worth it to pay the $19.95 because you weren't sure if it was a good, legit message from a real.
Right. It wasn't about you. It was more just, I have no idea what the message says. And what if it truly is something that just says oh, sorry, you seem like a nice person, but not a fit for me. That's
your fixed mindset
at
work. Because a growth mindset would say, this is my soulmate on the other end of $19.95.
That's fair. So we then messaged.
Can I just tell the other side of that story real quick?
Yeah, please do.
Because I do think it's kind of interesting or unique. So we both came out of these 10-year marriages, coincidentally. And it was a very sudden thing to me. And I went on this eat, pray, love trip. I'll just sum it up as that. I was like, I want to go. I was like, I got to get out of here. I haven't been out on a date. I mean, I remember joking to my friends, I got to shave my legs. I haven't been out on a date since college. And I just needed this, I needed to get away. And one of my very good friends who's a fan of the podcast, shout out to Mary, had also gone through a recent breakup of a not a marriage, but a long-term relationship. And she was down for a trip. So we went to Barcelona for 2 weeks. It was an awesome trip. On that trip, we decided to both create dating profiles. We lived in she lives in San Diego. I live in Atlanta. So she was doing something that was some popular site in San Diego. So we were on different sites, but we created profiles and we started reading some of the, seeing other people's after we created our own profiles. And it was kind of depressing. I really was just wow, is this what's out there? And we made a pact so we had created the profiles. Then we made a pact to not look at those sites for the rest of our vacation because we were this is depressing. And let's enjoy Barcelona. And we enjoyed Barcelona. I got home and also I think saw that you had pinged me and then sent you back a note. And so it was just it was kind of cool. It was I literally just gotten on a website is my point. And I was kind of this is going to be rough. And then I met you.
Well, it's kind of crazy because I think often about how fortunate it is that we met. There are some love stories not that any are better than others, but where people work together or they were friends or they, there were multiple times in their lives where they were consistently crossing paths and it was just a matter of when and not if.
Yeah.
And with our story, I mean, if I hadn't seen that email and clicked like, if you and Mary hadn't decided to do those profiles. And then, I mean, there's so many little things that could have changed and we may not have ever connected. And that would be very sad to me.
Yeah.
So I feel so fortunate that the stars aligned, it's kind of crazy.
I don't know that I like always believe in fate or whatever you want to call it, but I do think it's pretty cool that we met the way we did, given all the things. Also, like, I accidentally didn't set the like mileage range. Like, Greg knows I was real big. I was like, I'm not moving from where I live. I'm very rooted in this community. And he lived about an hour away, like, 45, 50 minutes away in like an extreme suburb of Atlanta, in my opinion, because I'm like grew up here and I got a small window or a small radius I work in. And so had I like been paying closer attention, I would have set a smaller radius. I would have set like a 10 to 20 mile radius and you wouldn't have popped for me. And so there's like little things where it's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. And luckily you were amenable to moving down the road.
So after a lot of messaging, emailing,
talking on the phone,
we eventually met for our first date and it was great. I was a little nervous, which is, I think, a good sign. Yeah, I mean, the rest is history.
I mean, a fun little financial fact. You had to pay that $19.95 because you just did like 1 month. I prepaid 3 months because it was a better rate. And I was like, this is going to take a while. So I, in the meantime, was like, I would like my money back. I don't need additional months. I'm just sort of half joking, but I think I had to pay like $80 or $90 to meet you, and you only had to pay $19.95.
Well, at some point too, I mean, I was worried you were just going to say, I like you, but I have to get my money's worth. So I'm going to keep dating for a few more months and we'll see where things go.
Well, you joke, but I did. There was an element of our relationship early on where I was like, I really like you and I'd like to meet you a year from now, because I just really felt like I needed to like, I think this is the wrong term for this, but like sow my wild oats kind of. Like, I just felt like it wouldn't, like, what are the odds that like the first person I really seriously like go out with is who I'm going to be with forever? Like,
well, you fear that it's a rebound relationship potentially. And
that you haven't seen what else is out there and like, all these things. I mean, back to the like fate thing, there were like a lot of signs, and I'm not sure I necessarily believe in signs, but I do believe in what it takes and makes to make a relationship successful. And there were a lot of those signs where like we were aligned in our thinking, including financially. Our financial story kind of evolved, which we can talk about. But even just at the beginning, I think we like little things, like we would rather go to a more casual restaurant than go out to some like fancy meal. Like we weren't big spenders, either one of us, for maybe different reasons even in the beginning. But like I think we were just like aligned to like, we would rather go for a hike than, I can't think of the opposite of going for a hike.
Well, I remember one of my favorite early-ish dates that you planned, and it was on a Tuesday because that was our night without kids usually. So we would go on dates on Tuesdays, and you planned this date. We went to a drive-in movie and we picked up pizza from Mellow Mushroom, which is not, budget. It's not inexpensive pizza, but it was, it wasn't a fancy dinner somewhere, and a 6-pack of beer, and you made brownies with butterscotch chips in it.
That was my grandma's recipe.
Yeah. And it was fun. I mean, I had such a great time.
Yeah, that was fun. What else did we do at the drive-in, Greg? I'm just kidding. Okay, let's keep going. So, do you remember what movie we saw?
We saw the movie with Zac Efron, Neighbors, I think, with him and Zach Rogen.
Joe Rogan.
Not Joe
Rogan.
Zach,
he's the podcaster.
Zac Efron and
Rogan.
It's not Rogan. What? It's Seth Rogen.
Seth Rogen. You're right. Seth Rogen. Poor Seth. I don't know his name. Yeah, you have a good memory. I couldn't have pulled out that piece of information for you. Another example of like little signs early on, which again, signs is not, but like, there's like red flags, and then there's, what's the opposite of a red flag? Green flags. I'll say there were a lot of green flags. So a couple of fun green flags. One, when we were like emailing and just, there's a lot of like, you're getting to know someone and banter. And like, I said, what kind of car do you drive? I think you can tell a lot about a person by the kind of car they drive. And look, keep in mind, this is coming from me. So if you tell me you drive like a BMW 3 Series, I'd be like, could you afford that? I wouldn't think you're like cooler for it. I'd more question your finances and like, you know, I might actually judge the opposite. The nicer car you had, it might be like a red flag perhaps. Anyways, you said you drove a Prius and I also drove a Prius and I was like, ooh, like a guy that cares about the environment, that's sexy. And a guy that's like kind of practical and just, you know, that's a very, I don't know, practical car.
It was a paid off Prius too.
Oh man, geez. Whew.
Yeah.
Gets me hot just thinking of paid off Prius. But that to me was like a big green flag. And then I also, at some point we became Facebook friends and I realized that we knew someone in common, but it was like a real obscure person to me. And it was like a friend of a friend. And I was like, well, how do you know that person? And then it turns out you lived next door to one of my best friends from growing up's husband who met through me. And you knew him. And so I immediately like go to him and I was like, wait, you know this guy, Greg Woods? And he like totally vouched for you. And like y'all hadn't kept in touch a lot since college, but he like was like, oh, he's a good guy. And you had transferred from that school, so you didn't know him as well after that. But for a while, you guys were like buds in college.
Yeah, for like 2 years. It wasn't just an acquaintance. I mean,
Yeah,
this was someone that was in my daily
Yeah.
hangout group.
Yeah.
Both freshman and sophomore years.
And he was now in my daily hangout group. And so it was just a cool, like, you know, it always helps when someone can like vouch for somebody in real life. And so just all these like interesting, you know, again, like green flags. And I think there were many of them. Like you were just like an incredibly nice, kind person. I saw the way you were with your kids. And so we blossomed very quickly, I would say. We, you know, again, my biggest hang up was like feeling like I met you too soon on this journey, you know, but that was just in my head. That wasn't like a ration. That was a, you know, there was no real thing there other than just like a mindset of like, well, I should, you know, this should be later on, or again, like thinking it, you know, felt like a rebound or something. But I think we clicked very well, very fast. And oh, you're cute. You're like smiling at me. We're in the. He's like gazing at me from across the room.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I mean, I think we had a lot of fun. And we still have a lot of fun, but I think, you know, our early dating life was fun and it was scary for both of us, I think, because we had both been through, you know, such changes in life.
Yeah.
And when you're dating with young kids, it's a much different ball game than when you're, you know, dating early in life. And so it was fun. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
But it was pretty great.
I would actually sum it up with like, we had a lot of chemistry, right? Like physically and emotionally. And we also had a unique experience of, if you've ever been divorced or know anyone who's divorced, you all of a sudden have time without your kids for the first time in a long time because your kids are with your other spouse, your ex-spouse at some point, right? And so your you know, custody is going on and off. And so, yeah, we would have every other weekend together. And like you said, too, you have a good memory, Tuesday nights at the time. And we would have that without kids, which was, you know, when you're like in your mid 30s, or were we in our early 30s then? Early to mid 30s.
Mid, I would say, yeah.
I think I was in my early 30s. You were in your mid, whatever. And we just had like one, you know, it's hard to get to know each other when you've always got kids around, even in your current marriage, right? And we just had a lot of like good time to like, we could go to concerts and like, we could just do like a lot of fun stuff. And we had a nice mix of like time with our kids, time to focus on work, and time together, and to really like enjoy time together and get to know each other. And it was just like, you know, looking back on that, it was a fun time for sure.
Yeah, it was, definitely. I remember a lot of butterflies.
Like in your stomach?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good butterflies,
Oh,
though.
I was like, did we go see butterflies somewhere?
Should we talk a little bit about our
the
financial piece?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people ask us this on like, you know, did we both know we wanted to early retire when we met? No, I did not have that as a personal goal. You did not even know what that was. I'm not sure I even knew what that was at the time. I mean, that was...
Yeah, I don't remember you talking about that at all when we...
Hey, as of next month, we met 10 years ago, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, April.
Oh, right. Earth Day,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't Earth Day the first day we...
Mm-hmm.
Is that April 20th? Did I make that up?
I don't know.
Whatever. Earth Day is our meeting anniversary. And so that was 10 years ago is my point. I did not really like know much about FIRE. I don't think I knew about it at all. So maybe we just could like share where we were each at financially.
Sure. Divorces are expensive. And
That's a good way to start it.
not anything specifically different about my divorce or too specific about it in general, but you take one household that is
two incomes.
two incomes and one home, and you split that up, and now you've got two separate homes, and you're dividing things, and so it's...
And I'll throw in like 90% of the cases, the man, regardless of incomes, is paying some level of child support.
Yeah. So there's that too.
Yeah.
And so for me, coming out of my divorce, I had a real focus on reducing my expenses, remaining cash flow positive. I was not trying to save massive amounts at that point, but trying to establish a good trajectory.
You were trying not to like be in the red every month, right?
Exactly.
Like you wanted to.
Yeah. And I had a really good friend who helped me through a lot of my divorce, both emotionally. He'd been through one and lived nearby. This was a college friend I reconnected with. But even financially, he would help me think about those things. And I think I was feeling overwhelmed, and he said, you got to get cash flow positive. That's step one. Don't worry about everything. Yeah, just do what you can do to get cash flow positive every month. And that was like a very doable thing for me.
Yeah.
So fast forward, by the time Maggie and I started dating, I had achieved that. I had always been someone that, saved in my retirement account. So I remember one day we were talking about retirement accounts,
I ask you the size of your 401k?
I think so. I think
it sounds like something I would ask.
There was one day where we were like, kind of, tell me yours and I'll tell you mine.
Show me yours and I'll show you mine.
We talked about our retirement accounts, and I think it was reassuring to both of us that we, had both been people who saved, and just along those lines of like we weren't aspiring to FIRE, but we were both savers. We both had, we had retirement accounts. We were putting into them. We were both people who didn't carry debt. I did at some point carry credit card debt, but by the time you and I met, I had either paid that off or paid most of it, and was really on a positive financial trajectory, and really wanted to meet someone that shared that value. And I remember this same friend, even we were talking about dating, and back to the Prius.
This made me really like this guy.
I had said something along the lines of, man, if I'm going to be dating again, can I still do I need to get a new car? Like, can I show up for a first date in a Prius? And he was very adamant. He drove a Honda Civic, and he said, if the person you're going to be dating cares about a car, they're not the person you want to be dating. Yeah. And maybe you want to date them in the short term, but they're certainly not the person you want to be pursuing for as a partner. And that was just so reassuring, because I was overthinking everything, worried about everything. And then a few months later to meet you, and you reaffirm that, oh, that's so cool that you drive a Prius. I do too. That's really, it takes lined up.
And it takes the pressure off. And then there's like a connection and a vulnerability point, and kind of realizing like, oh, we care about the same stuff. Right. And like, I think that's a super attractive quality. And look, we'll share some research in a little bit that actually shows other people also think that's a super attractive quality. Perhaps not everyone, but there are people out there that think some level of, financial savviness and being responsible with your money is pretty sexy.
Right. So to sum up my perspective coming in, I think we're both financially responsible. We have some savings. We are not big spenders, but we're also not thinking about FIRE. I don't know if you have your thoughts are.
I mean, mine was similar in the sense of, like I've said before, I was always somewhat just frugal by nature my whole life, and started, slowly making more and more money and not really inflating my lifestyle. And I was in a mode of like aggressively paying off my mortgage and really wanting to be mortgage free. And so that kind of, it's like, I didn't have a FIRE goal, but I did for some reason just want to be debt free. And that felt like a cool thing to do. And so I was already like on that journey when we met. And so I think it just put me in a very good financial position kind of from the start. And it felt really, like we said a few times, like it felt really good to meet someone else who also had a similar mentality. And I say around money, but to me, it's about around like what's important in life, and just that it isn't all about money. Like, I want some level of financial security, and that's important to me in life. But I think the whole money angle is more that like I had realized that money wasn't going to bring me long-term happiness. And I think you had realized something similar, even if we couldn't have verbalized it that way at the time.
Yeah. Well, I remember even early on in my career reading some study that had come out that said that, and this big study that said that a certain amount of money is essential for well-being and security and brings happiness. But then beyond that, there was a
it was like 100
decreasing correlation between income increasing and happiness increasing. And that always had stuck with me.
And many people have like debunked that survey, by the way, now.
Yeah.
But I still think it's the spirit of it, I believe, is accurate, right? For me at least, there's a point at which there's some like creature comforts I get to have. And then there's a point at which, and I felt it myself, like more money was not making me more happy.
Yeah.
It was like more money, more problems.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
more money, more problems.
in the words of the dearly departed Notorious B.I.G.
I like it. I mean, I don't like that he's departed, to be clear. I like his music is what I meant. So just to fast forward, we were both pretty aligned going in around our finances and just our mentality around money. And there wasn't like a moment when all of a sudden we like had a goal to early retire together, right? It really slowly evolved, right? Like I think we talked a lot about work and what mattered in life. And I think there were times on and off over the years where one or both of us was really stressed out and overwhelmed by the amount we were working. And we would talk about that a lot. And we would talk about what we cared about. And we would talk about, just what mattered to us. And I think eventually I started getting a little bit more into like reading more about FIRE stuff and learning more about it. And I kind of had like interacted with Kirsten and Julian, who worked at the same company as me. So I was familiar with their journey. And I first learned about the concept of early retirement through them. And then eventually I met Mike, and I think who is my former co-host on Friends on Fire. We podcast together for 3 years between 2020 and 2023. Yeah. And that influence and relationship really like supercharged a lot of our thinking and getting like more aggressive and just sort of realizing that like, I always talk about early retirement and that like 3 things were happening at the same time that slowly converged together and created the spark. You like that? That works. The spark we needed to fire ourselves. And those 3 things were, we were more and more stressed by work. It was like, it was just, and not just stressed. Everybody's stressed by work off and on, but I think we more and more were like disenfranchised with like, we had both reached great levels of success, probably more than we ever expected to reach in our lives if you had like asked us at some point in our lives. And we're realizing like it didn't really bring like happiness with it. It brought a lot of like bureaucracy and stress and just... And
disenchanted might be the word.
Yeah.
I think we both just were kind of over it.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a privileged thing to say but I mean, we were getting to the point where we said,
what's this all for? Like, why are we doing this? And looking at our kids, like, what,
Yeah, and saw that there was a potential on the horizon.
Okay, so the first thing was we were getting disenchanted with work. The second thing is we're getting better and better at like our savings rate was getting higher and higher. And we were realizing like financially we could do this. And we could do this in a few years, especially if we really buckle down and like get even more aggressive on our savings rate, which we did. And then the third thing is I think both of us, tied to the like disenchantment with work, we're having more and more like life is short moments. Like we were looking around at our kids, we were looking at just how tired we were and how like just constantly running everywhere and just frantic. And we were seeing people our age getting diagnosed with cancer, people our age dying, like all of these things that I think just made us have these like, what are we doing with our lives moments, And so I think to me, those 3 things were slowly converging and kind of created this spark that eventually we just kept lighting. And again, I'm like playing with this fire metaphor here, and eventually we realized, and I think then COVID hit.
Well, yeah, I was going to add COVID as a fourth fuel to the fire.
COVID was like throwing some kerosene on the fire, kind of.
Because I think it showed us that things could change in the world. It showed me that.
Yeah.
It showed me that my identity wasn't work. I didn't think it was, but it's hard to tell when that's what you live and breathe every day. And to be working from home and have more time with family, see your kids. It gave
us a taste of a little more freedom and time with our kids.
Yeah.
And we liked it.
I think I found personally that I like this. I like being more present with the kids. I don't need to have a title or a,
Yeah.
some recognition from work to be happy, that I am happy when I'm being there for my family.
Yeah. If anything, you needed the opposite. You were just realizing that was like not making you feel good.
Right.
There were more like negatives at work than there were positives
Yeah.
for you. So that just slowly evolved. Again, like COVID sort of threw some kerosene on it. And we eventually, not just like one day, like we eventually were like, there were times that we said like one of us was going to do it first. It was kind of a running joke of like who had a bad day and like like someone needs to keep insurance. And so we just slowly were like learning more and more. And it was, it was post vaccine and kind of life getting quote back to normal that we finally like decided to pick a date. And it kind of started to align with when everybody was like really forcing you to go back to the office too, which was nice because I was like, I don't know if I can do it. I would do it on a small basis. And I was like, this is a lot to like put some pants on and like drive to work. And so, yeah, we picked a date and we wanted to do it before the summer. And we wanted, because we wanted to take like a cool trip with our kids over the summer to kind of celebrate and commemorate it. Your birthday is May 7th. Greg thought it would be, I think May 6th was like a Friday. And Greg was like, well, then I can say I retired when I was 43. If it's the next day, I have to say I retired when I was 44. So I was like, okay, let's get you retired by 43. I think at some point my work even asked if like some date was negotiable. I was like, no, because Greg's birthday is on the 7th. So I turned into a pumpkin on May 7th. It's got to be the 6th. But we finally like picked a date and, I think we had a firm plan about a year, like 9 months to a year before that date. We knew the date. I had told my work like much earlier than you told your work, but you still told yours like pretty early. Or were they close? Maybe?
7 months.
Yeah, I think I did like 9 months or something not ridiculous that I would not recommend. But so yeah, that is our story, and I hope it's, I don't know, interesting. I get a lot of questions around it, so I hope it's interesting. And I hope it's, like, to me, the value in sharing that, I like to remind people that there's somebody out there that thinks the way you do about the world and has the same values you have, and like hold out for it, right? Like don't settle. I mean, there's certain things where like you're not gonna, like nobody's perfect, and there's things where you should settle is the wrong word, but where you should realize like everybody's different and everybody brings with it, they're tapping and whatever kind of things they do. Greg makes noises while he eats. I'm just joking. Everybody makes noises while they eat. I just don't. I have like misophonia, self-diagnosed, where you don't like to hear people eat. I'm just joking, Greg. You make the same level of noise everybody makes while they eat. Anyways, my point is like there are people out there, and especially when you think about like financial feels like something where you might be being superficial. I actually think it's the opposite, right? Like you're not looking for someone with tons of money. You're looking for someone who has financial views that are aligned with yours. And I think it's worth mentioning, if you're already in a relationship with someone you love dearly, there's still so many things you can do to get aligned financially. And you and I, Greg, actually did an episode on this called Love and Money, Navigating Finances in a Relationship, which is episode 128 on the Inside Out Money podcast. And we'll put a link in the show notes. But there's a lot of things you can do in your existing relationship to get more aligned if you aren't naturally aligned. But if you're single, like look for someone where you are naturally aligned, because I think it is a huge factor of the success in a relationship. Like just being, it's a big thing that can cause disagreements in a relationship. And so for you to be aligned on your financial views, I think is really important. And the research supports that. So in that other episode I mentioned, we shared a lot of different research and stats, but I alluded to this earlier. There is actually research that shows saving money is sexy. And I said it before, like I totally agree. So there was a 2022 study called For Love and Money from an organization called Life Happens. And it found that people are attracted to partners who plan ahead, and that more and more people are talking openly about their money before saying I love you and committing to a relationship. And so there were some cool stats, like 67% of those in a relationship agree that there is nothing sexier than saving money. I totally agree.
That's impressive though.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if I'd love to see this trended.
Yeah.
And if that was the case 15, 20, 30 years ago, or if people are becoming more...
I'd love to see that broken out by sex also.
Well, that would be interesting
male,
too.
Female, etc. Non-binary. 74% of people said that it took between 1 and 8 months to be comfortable talking about their finances with their partner, while in that same period, only 42% would say, I love you. It's kind of confusing to track, but you get
Well,
the
it is,
idea.
and it's such a span of 1 to 8 months. It's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long window. Well, I think it more is the idea is like you're not talking about money on the first date.
Right.
But I don't know. I might have asked you the size of your 401k on the first date.
No.
I waited.
It was
a
not
little-
first
I waited
date.
a
It
little
was, yeah, it was a few weeks.
I already knew you drove a Prius, so I was like, okay, that'll get you a few weeks. Then I'm going to ask about the 401k soon. 42% describe financial security as one of the most attractive traits to have in a romantic partner. 59% would feel more secure in their relationship if they discussed getting life insurance with their partner. That's a very specific stat.
Yeah.
Sponsored by the life insurance industry. And 51% say that the right time to do that is before marriage. Well, definitely. Anyways, the point is saving money can be super sexy. And you got to find the person that thinks that's sexy. And, you know, I've said this before, and I'm not giving you any specific relationship advice because I don't know. Not talking to you, Greg, talking to the listeners, but I don't know your individual situation and I could never know all of the intricacies of it. But I do believe if you're early on in a relationship and there's already like huge red flags around financial stuff, like that to me would be a big like, ooh, we got to be able to at least talk about this. And if we can't talk about it constructively and maturely and vulnerably and honestly, I might be out of here.
Yeah, I think that's really well said because again, everyone's got to do what they're comfortable with and they're going to fall in love with who they fall in love with. And some people, you know, have not had good financial practices due to some circumstances that could be within their hands and without. But I think your point especially of can you have an open conversation about it?
Yeah.
Can you talk about, hey, this isn't ideal. How do we change this? This is an important part of our relationship. To me, that's really critical. So if you can't even do that, that's a really big red flag. And how are you going to do that later down the line if you can't do it earlier? I think it's really critical. And I think you've got to find someone you are aligned with financially. And if you are having to spend huge sums of money to attract the right partner,
to woo
that's
them
not gonna change. You're going to and again, it's fine if you're a big earner and you like blowing money, then
do it.
You may be very happy in your life, but I think you've really got to look in your heart of hearts and find out what your values are and find someone that matches those.
Well, and I think so much of this is like life stage also, right? So a lot of people meet when they're younger and they don't maybe have as much money or as much financial security built up. We met when we were a little bit older and more established, right? We were in our 30s. But we also met at a time when, like you said, divorce is expensive and anyone splitting households and then all of a sudden being, you know, one person, you got to like rebuy everything, right? There's all this stuff. I think the idea is someone that can match your energy during that phase of life. And so someone coming in and realizing, hey, like you've just been through a divorce, like money's kind of tight and that's okay. And we can have a great relationship while money's tight. And someday we may have a lot more flexibility and freedom to spend more. And that's great. And we'll get there together. And I'm going to be a part of that process. And, you know, I think that to me is like, it's not about like, I feel like sometimes when we talk about like money being important in a relationship, again, it comes across wrong and is like superficial. And I'm more mean, like to me, money and talking about financial stuff, it's talking about life. It's what, like everything you want to do in life costs money. And so you're talking about like what matters to you in life and what you value and what is intentional to you. And money is the topic around that, but it's not about the money. It's about what's important to you in life. And that to me is what you need to be so aligned with your partner of choice.
Yeah. And even your comment of couples that meet earlier in life when they don't have as much money, I think there are still things to look for. What is that person's attitude around debt? Do they view debt as a tool to build, such as appropriate debt as, you know, a mortgage?
Yeah, they're building a real estate empire.
Debt to start a business. Or are they someone who views debt as an easy way to live beyond their means?
Yeah, are they whining and dining you on debt? Like that would be super unattractive to me.
And so I think those are still things you can talk to people about. You know, are they content living within their means now, knowing that as life progresses and your income increases, you will have more money to do more extravagant things. So those are little things I think that you can talk about openly, even if you're younger and both people are coming in without much money to this point. So when we talk about dating and the cost of love and dating, what do you think, Maggie? Are there some ways to still woo someone, date someone, have a great, dating life without spending lots of money?
Yeah, I think, look, I know there's the whole love languages thing, which I I can't remember. I think it might have been canceled or something, but like the author of it, I don't remember. But the idea of like everyone's love language is different. And like mine happens to be acts of service. Like I love acts of service. You know that. I love the coffee. Thank you. But everyone's is different. Some people do like gifts. But I do think it doesn't cost any money to show your love to someone. And actually, some of the best things you can do are the things that don't cost money. Like, Greg, you could go out and buy me, what are the new Apple goggles called?
Apple Vision Pro.
You could buy me the Apple Vision Pro for Valentine's Day. Hint, hint. Or you could like write, you know that I love like a really good like written card or letter or something. And like not even a card that you bought at the store, because I think that's kind of a waste of money. And you know that if you have flowers delivered to me, I'll get kind of annoyed because there's such a big markup on that. It's such a waste of money. And so you know the person you're with, but my point is like for me, the things that put your like mental energy into something are way more valuable and appreciated by me than you throwing money at something. Like I can throw money at something, and I know you could too if you want to, but I want your time and energy and focus, because that to me is love. And to me, the best presents involve that. And you're in a little bit of creativity and a little bit of you like even getting outside your comfort zone, because your comfort zone is not necessarily like planning a date or but you'll do it. And you've done it many, many times in your life. Right. And I know when you do that I'm like, oh, he like thought ahead. He, you know, did all these things. And so like some ideas are stuff like write a letter, write a poem. It doesn't need to be good. It doesn't need to be. We just went to our very first poetry slam last night at this bar in Atlanta. It was like really, it was fascinating. And like, I actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would as well.
And that was like a really cheap date. I mean, it was $10 each to get in. And actually had either of us agreed to say something during the open mic, which the host like was like, wink, wink, you can get in for $5 if you just, and Greg was like, I'll pay double to not be on the mic. Anyways, we could have gotten in for $5 each is my point. But it was like a $20 date. It was super cheap and it was fun. It was just like doing something different together. Like that to me was fun. And so anyways, there's just all these things you can do to show your love to someone for nothing to very little. So cooking a meal, planning a picnic, giving your partner a massage, like that's something nice and you can make it a little special. Put, dim the lights, light a candle, put some nice music on. I always say a massage is gonna be like win-win in the end, because like it's probably gonna end in some other things. Wink, wink. That's something that's like nice and they're gonna enjoy it, and you put a little thought into it, and you're not just like, oh hey, this is my bro voice. Oh hey, can I give you a massage now? Like it's like, maybe write a little note. Put it on the counter. Say like, I've got a special massage for you planned at 6:00 tonight. Meet me in the bed, like come here. Maybe have a little scavenger hunt where there's a few little clues around the house that tell the person about that so they know it's happening. And, the delivery can be part of the specialness of whatever you're doing. If you plan a little picnic, it could just be a little candlelit dinner on the back deck, but you have a few little scavenger hunt clues around the house and you included all my favorite foods and you showed that you know me. And so, I mean, I think there's so many things you can do. And I think it is all about thinking about your partner and what they would appreciate and value. And if you don't know, go ask them. Don't ask them like on the eve of their birthday. Ask them like on a random day. Be like, hey babe, like what do you get most excited about? If you haven't just figured it out over time, like just ask the question and then write it down and remember it for the future. That's my thoughts on like, to me, those things you do for me, I'm trying to think, Greg, of some of the things you've done for me where they're the most, I have a terrible memory. So this is a bad exercise. Bad corner I've backed myself into. But like when you just write a little note on the coffee maker, I already know there's coffee in there because I can see you've like prepped it for me and put a clean mug under it. I mean, it's fully prepped. All I literally have to do is hit a button. And often I screw that part up because you kind of like on the Keurig, there's like, it's confusing how many times you hit the button. Anyways, you'll leave a note sometimes on it. Or like, God, what are some other things you've done?
I don't know. I'm bad at recalling.
Me too. But great stuff. You give great massages. I think there's times that you'll like plan something out. Even sometimes I'll even drop in. I'll be like, oh, we need to like go out and, do something. Like there's nothing. Here's the other thing. I'm not into like playing games. Like if you are on the end of a partnership where you're feeling like your partner hasn't done much for you lately and you need a little love and attention or something, tell them. Even if it's a dropping a hint or just directly be like, I just feel like we haven't done anything in a while. I mean, there's ways you can say it where you're not like crapping on your partner. And you're just sort of dropping some breadcrumbs for them to follow, right? Like, I just think like open, honest, vulnerable communication in a relationship about everything, including finances, is so critical to the success of a relationship. And I don't think you should expect your partner to read your mind. So if your partner isn't one to do all of like some of the things I just listed, like write a letter, plan a picnic, you could plan a little adventure day out where you like, in Atlanta, we have a cool belt line, like go walk on the belt line and like have some stuff pre-planned where you're like, I've done some research and we're going to stop here and get a coffee and then
go find a poetry slam.
Yeah, go find a poetry slam. And like plan something kind of just fun and different out like that. But if your partner's not the one to do that, like send them this podcast and be like, oh, I thought this would be a fun podcast for us to listen to together. Now they're going to know because I just said that. And they're going to be like, wait, am I that person? But my point is there's nothing wrong with telling your partner what you need. This is not a game. They don't need to like, some people are good at reading your mind and like figuring out, you know, your cues. Some people aren't, and they need to be told what you like. As
opposed to resenting them and feeling like maybe they're not the right partner. Don't discount them if they're maybe not quite as much of a romantic at heart. I mean, that's definitely not, everyone's not as romantically inclined. It doesn't mean they don't love or care about you. It just might mean that just doesn't come quite as naturally to them.
Yeah, I know someone who is married to a guy who is awesome, like in all respects. He's not the one to think proactively about like a cool gift or like planning something special. But as soon as she gave him that feedback early on in their relationship and he understood how important it was to her, he got on board. You know, like people are trainable. And I don't mean that in like a, you know, like to discount. I mean, trainable sounds like you're like a dog or something, but people are trainable and coachable, and that like you have to tell people what you want and what you need and what's important to you. And I'm beating a dead horse at this point.
Well, Maggie, those are all really good ideas, and I agree with that. Everything you said. I mean, for me, you are amazing at writing little of letters and notes, and I always love them. They're creative, they're funny, they're sweet, and they mean so much more to me than something you could buy. And we find ways to find affordable dates. Sometimes we splurge and we do have a more expensive date. And I think that's okay too. I think when that's not the norm, it makes it even more special.
Yeah.
So that's something too. It's not to say you can't ever splurge and have a date on on your anniversary or some thing that's important to you.
Yeah.
But when the norm isn't fancy expensive dates, it makes those fancy expensive dates feel even more novel and special.
Yeah.
So lots of ways to date affordably, whether you're in the dating phase or you're married and you're dating to keep things exciting and special.
Keep that spark going. Keep the fire going. On that note, Greg, you've heard me say this many times, and we'll just wrap it up on this. I actually care more about you doing something on a non-holiday, because that shows me that you're like caring when Hallmark didn't remind you need to care. Right? Like Greg knows I would rather him do something not on Valentine's Day. Like he gets more kudos for doing something on a random day, I'd say, than like Valentine's Day. And again, I'm not like keeping score here when I say kudos. I just mean like I appreciate it even more when it's random. And another thing, when I couldn't think of like kind of stuff you'll do that doesn't cost anything, Greg. Like there's certain nights that Greg will be like, oh, let's just like watch a rom-com, which he knows is my thing. Like he's willing to watch it, and you've watched many with me. But you know, they'll like, just that he'll sort of be like, oh, like, let's watch a good movie tonight, and let's just kind of like, and you pick it, and like I picked, and sometimes he'll be like, I found a couple already, like which one do you like? And I'm like, oh, he did a little bit of research, and we're gonna Netflix and chill tonight, and like that's one of my favorite nights. And then you like, oh, get some food, and then you like let me eat it on the couch in front of the movie, which is my favorite. You know, we've talked about that. I just think those, like, to me, those smaller, thoughtful little like everyday acts are why the phrase "love don't cost a thing" is real. And I think true love, not to be like too cheesy or sentimental, but like true love doesn't require a lot of money to be thrown at it. And I think that is a good point to end on. Yeah?
I agree. I think this is an important topic, and I think it's be conscious when you're out there and you're dating. And
it's crazy out there, y'all, in the dating world.
Yeah.
Were you going to say be conscious of what?
I don't even know what to say, honestly.
Yeah, be conscious. Don't be unconscious. Good tip.
That's
Okay. Well, thank you all for listening. Happy almost Valentine's Day. Or you might be listening to this on Valentine's Day or after Valentine's Day. Whatever. Happy February. Happy whatever. You could be listening to this anytime. So bye. Thank you for listening. We know your time is always valuable and limited. We appreciate you spending some of it with us. If you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you want to give us a written review on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave us a rating on Spotify. We also love when you share this with someone else. So like I said earlier, like share this with a potential partner or a family member that you think would get something out of it. And we love to encourage, just ongoing discussions around money.
You can also subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And then if you have any thoughts or questions, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370 or hit us up on the gram.
The gram, I like it. Okay. Bye, Greg. I love you.
Bye. Love you too, Maggie.